Welcome everyone. We are going to wait just a couple minutes before we get started to allow more people to get into the room. We have quite a few people joining us today, so thank you for your patience. Once again, welcome everyone and good evening. We are waiting just a couple minutes for, I'm sure more people will be joining very soon, so we just want to wait until we have more people here first. Well, it is now 3 minutes past the hour, so I think that we should go ahead and get started. Once again, welcome everybody to today's webinar, the second in this 5-part series. Once again, my name is Michael Ogia. I'm a Belgrade-based consultant, editor, and researcher who has worked in the internet governance and digital policy sector since 2015. And I have more than a decade of experience in development, policy, and media across 5 countries: the US, Lebanon, India, Turkey, and Serbia. I will be your host throughout the series of webinars, which is brought to you by the E-Commerce Association of Georgia, with thanks to the generous support of the USAID Economic Development Governance and Enterprise Growth Project, EDGE, the USAID ZIRDA activity in Georgia, and the USAID Economic Security Program. Many thanks to them for their support for this series. In today's webinar, we will talk about global online marketplaces and ways to launch a business in some of these marketplaces from the countries of the region, including Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. It will be held in English, but it's also being simultaneously translated into Russian. You can select your preferred translation, your preferred language rather, by clicking on the globe icon on the bottom control bar and then selecting the language of your preference. The audio will also be simultaneously translated by our interpreter. As a reminder, the next webinar is scheduled for next Tuesday, the 15th, and will focus on payments for cross-border e-commerce. Now, before we get into before I introduce our speakers, we just want to briefly introduce this topic. And basically from Amazon to Etsy to AliExpress and eBay, online marketplaces have transformed from being a very small corner of the early commercial internet to becoming practically an essential part of everyday life. Online marketplaces may not be as lively and rambunctious as the outdoor markets that our region is known for, as famous for, but many similarities still persist. There are many sellers and buyers trading at the same time in the same location, in this case, the website, or an app, and all of whom are looking for the best deal. All of these individuals, whether sellers or buyers, in the sense consumers, are all looking for the best deal. And while bargaining may not be as easy via a website or an application, searching for the best deals is still a fundamental part of the experience. As you can imagine, the COVID-19 pandemic has made global online marketplaces more appealing and lucrative to sell and shop than ever before. And in fact, according to data from IBM on trends in the United States, for instance, the COVID-19 pandemic has permanently accelerated the e-commerce industry by 5 years, while marketplaces are seeing a surge in traffic and demand, accelerated by the shift from offline to online shopping trends, which is exactly what we discussed in the previous webinar. How can we take advantage of these trends? And most importantly, how can you and all of us turn this opportunity and turn these trends into opportunity within our region? Tonight's webinar is meant to help answer these questions and will give you an insider's look, at the marketplace strategy, exploring the options available and navigating through the essentials of launching cross-border trade and e-commerce activities. In this webinar, you will learn how to define a go-to market strategy across foreign markets. You will learn a little bit more about the decision criteria for selecting a right marketplace for your business needs. And lastly, how to establish and scale on marketplaces and in omni-channel retail. In today's webinar, we are being joined by Jill, and let me make sure I get this right. I don't think I will. Please forgive me, Jill. Ebonoejde? I'm so sorry. Jill is, I'm completely butchered her name, and I'm purposely avoiding my Zoom screen so that you cannot see me blushing. But Jill is a marketplace and e-commerce expert, bringing over 15 years of working experience at the biggest marketplaces in the world, such as eBay and OLX Group Naspers, and is part of the consulting team at Stelworks in New York and Connective Payments in Amsterdam. Jill leads the digital transformation from marketplaces to fully automate and build an order-to-cash organization and digital payment system. Besides corporate experience, Jill is a creative entrepreneur and a founder of a lifestyle brand, Maison Avaza. The brand blends fashion, well-being, and neuroscience to enhance personal branding. Jill will share with us insider tips and tricks and talk about defining a go-to market strategy for marketplaces, emerging trends, highlight some of the tips to select the right marketplace, and establish scaling on marketplaces and again on omni-channel retail. We also have joining tonight Levin Kakaje. I'm so sorry. As much as I love Georgia, I really need to work on my Georgian clearly. Perhaps one of these days post-COVID, I'll be able to come back to the wonderful country of Georgia and spend more time there. But I can say this: Levon is the co-founder of Pomona Organic Juices and Pomona, which is a take on pet foods and other kinds of treats for pets. And he's also a trade specialist who will share his inspiring story about selling Georgia-produced organic products to the EU, to the US and EU markets through Amazon. Levon has a lot to pass on a lot of knowledge to pass on in terms of how to successfully navigate a company and upscale it from being an Amazon seller, which is the very basic level, to becoming an Amazon vendor. Besides this, Levon brings 15 years of experience in international trade, import and exports, and logistics in the agricultural sector. So please get your questions ready, and we will have a Q&A. I was actually not looking at the screen because Jill and Levon, I did not want to look at your faces as I clearly mispronounce your name. So I'm really, really sorry about that. I know we practice. Thank you for forgiving me. Having said that, let's just go over some very brief housekeeping rules just so that we can move this along and make sure that we can engage with you. So first of all, as an attendee of the webinar, you will be able to watch and listen to the speakers just as last time. But as an attendee, you are not going to have control over your video and microphone. please ask questions using the Q&A section. And we actually do recommend that you stick to the Q&A box, which you can find on the bottom navigation bar, because that will allow us to answer them in a better way than if they're just in the chat. However, you can also share messages in the chat, and just make sure that before sending that message, you select all panelists and attendees so that everyone can view your messages. At the end of each presentation, we will also group your questions and address them as much as possible. Lastly, we also want to run a short poll before the end of the webinar, similar to the last one, just trying to gauge your feelings about this. So please make sure to fill that in when it pops up toward the end of the webinar. Now, we are honored to welcome our first speaker today, Jill, and you know, we also want to basically run a bit of a game while we're throughout this this webinar series. So basically, we want to basically incentivize everyone here to ask good questions. And so, you know, we understand that you know, it takes a lot of courage to move forward, and being an entrepreneur is a very tough journey. So there is no preset criteria, but there is a small prize that we will select. We will give to the best question, which will be a mentorship session with Jill. And thank you very much, Jill, for being so willing to offer this. Without further ado, I've talked a lot. My apologies, everyone. Jill, you have about 30 to 35 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mikhail. You're doing great pronouncing my surname. I've heard like words, so let me share my screen. One second. Can you guys see my screen?
No, Jill, no, we can't, not yet.
Yeah, I see uploaded the presentations, but okay, so I cannot share my screen now?
You can share, but we just can't see it yet.
Because I see two versions.
There we go. There we go. Now we see it, Jill.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, it might have just been a delay.
Yeah, great. So my name is Jill Ebanoidze, and I've been in marketplaces for decades. My objective today is to share some of the experiences I've gained during this number of years. Keeping in mind this session is translated, I'm going to try to speak slowly. And also the language I'm using is more towards basic and simple, so everyone can understand. But please ask any questions you have at the end of the sessions if something is not unclear. Objective for me today is, everyone knows marketplaces is a huge industry. So for me, objective is to give you some starting points in terms of understanding what is required to go to marketplaces and which marketplace can be the right fit for your product or services, and then how to get there. And to do so, I decided to split my presentation in two phases. So in phase one, which is a part one of the presentation, I'm gonna focus and talk about designing from the idea until going to minimum viable product, keeping in mind that we are designing product or services for the global consumer, which we'll talk about is very different than just designing a product you are passionate about versus designing a product customers globally require to simplify their daily lives. Second part of the presentation will give you an overview of the landscape of marketplaces and what is a good playbook to use while selecting one. And then finally, how to onboard our product there. And at the end, of course, we'll have some takeaways, and then the floor is open for Q&A. Feel free to ask as many questions as possible, and there is no stupid question. So let's keep this session very informal. Okay, let's get started. I think I need to, okay. Do you guys see my screen well?
Yes, Jill, we see just fine.
Okay, perfect. So first phase is from, I know that most of you guys are entrepreneurs already, or you plan to become one. And before you design the product, you have the idea. And I always have this playbook of 3P: problem, product, and people. What is the problem we are solving? Pick one specific problem, which is very small, but be dedicated to solve it the best and the most simplest way possible. And then what is the product? Like, what is your unique value proposition and how authentic is it? As we all know, today market has everything. There is everything out there, like whatever you wish, in a form you wish. So how is your product different? And then who is your audience? And this is very important. I think problem and people you are solving this problem for is a key when it comes to designing the right product and offering in a right way. And there is a difference between designing product for consumer in your neighborhood, in your country, or globally, because believe it or not, the cultural element, the lifestyle is so different that consumers are having different shopping behaviors, and that impacts the success of your product. Let's say if in one country people prefer to go to retail stores, in busy cities, people prefer to do shopping while they are on their mobile, on lunch break. So even if you have a great product, but available only on desktop, it might not be a very good idea. But we'll go through all these steps later on, and that's where marketplaces come handy. Phase 2 is like also part of this phase 1, but once you have the product, you know your consumer, it's very important to test the idea and create minimum viable products, which means you launch your service and product within 50 people or 100 or 500. And this gives you a good understanding of strong and weak points, what your customers love or what they need to have delivered differently. So use as much as data and feedback from this research phase as possible. I call this as a strong foundation, and we all know if we build a foundation well, we will build much more beautiful and stable house on top of it in a more efficient way. So take your time to invest in this phase. And once you have designed your product and launched this MVP, take a step back and work on your strategic plan. What is your business plan? What are your metrics? Create your strategy, which is long-term, short-term, and medium-term, but make sure you have your milestones marked. And what do I mean is that if you have 3 months, quarterly basis, a milestone you want to achieve, make sure you are on target. And also you keep space to be adaptable. As an example, all entrepreneurs around me had 2 years plan to go scale their products. But then pandemic came in and nothing that we have planned worked anymore. So what we had to do is to take a step back, review it, be adaptable, and find opportunities in the window of crisis. in every crisis, there are opportunities, right? So it's very, very crucial to be adaptable to the external environment as an entrepreneur. So for this phase 2, we're going to talk about how do we put this product in front of the right audience. And there are multiple channels. Whenever we have new business, what we tend to do naturally is go to local stores and retailers and say, hey, I have this amazing product. Are you going to sell it for me? Or try to get to supermarkets. This is one very traditional way of putting it out. But as you all know, when you are a startup, it's extremely hard to get to reputable stores. They all tell you, oh, you know what, we'll organically grow first and then we are going to review it. Or they might just accept it. But it will really take time until your exposure gets to the volume of audience you want to cover. So along with this, you might incorporate your own e-commerce web shop. If you have your website or if you have your social media site, most of them now offer e-commerce site as well. But this one also requires investment. You need to invest in search engine optimization. You need to invest in marketing. And if you are just starting up, this might be a heavy investment. However, all of those strategies work together. So if you have one shop selling your product, if you have e-commerce shop where you sell your products, it all adds up. Once you want to go bigger and access even more audience and go cross-border, there are marketplaces which come in handy. And we're going to cover this much more in details later on. Another step which I want to underline is collaboration. And people in many cases undermine the impact of collaboration. One of the findings that all the research of COVID times suggests is that businesses get stronger and survive through collaborations. Collaboration can be in different levels. One, you collaborate with the same size of startup, so you guys survive together. Other one can be that you collaborate with a brand which targets same type of segment. Let's say if you are producing fashion, which is in an affordable luxury or luxury segment, you try to collaborate with lifestyle brand, which sells in the same segment of affordable luxury or luxury item. So when customer comes to the showroom or the events and they buy lifestyle brand, they see your brand as well. This way you plant seeds for your customer. So for the future, when they require your type of product, they might check your e-commerce site or marketplace you are presenting your product on. And showrooms are also one very good place to be seen. Showrooms for fashion or trade shows for agriculture and other industries are extremely good exposure. Trade shows might be expensive to go to as a startup, but there are also subsidies that can help you to achieve this milestone. On the other hand, there are some almost free digital showrooms where you can present your portfolio. I'll talk about one of them in the later stage. So let's get started. We have our own e-commerce shop, but we still think we need to go bigger. How do we do that? Let's try marketplaces. And why could marketplaces be the good choice? As you can imagine, marketplaces such as Amazon, eBay, Etsy, been there quite a number of years now, right? And they have millions and billions of visitors daily basis. Of course, not all of the customers who visit those marketplaces are potentially your customers, but let's say 10% is yours. That's already huge, right? If you calculate back. So network effect is immense, mean that exposure marketplaces give to your product means instant scaling. And as you know, like if you want to go to be presented in front of such a big audience, usually you need to have lots of investment. But imagine marketplaces, they don't require any investment. So it's extremely easy to onboard your product on Etsy. Just takes a couple of, like maybe an hour, because you want to build your shop pretty nicely. It makes a difference. Or you can work on it a bit later. So onboarding is extremely easy. It's very efficient because you can do it on your own or you can outsource doing it, but basically there is no need to hire someone to do so. And the scalability, which we already talked about, it gives you all the tools to scale. And not only scale in terms of exposure, but also scale in terms of it helps you to do all operational support, let's say shipping, after sales, even packaging. Some of the marketplaces even help you to do photo shoots and like position your brand and design. Even Etsy has this functionality if you want so. Then one of the important part of going into shops is what if it doesn't work? And if you had an expectation which is not met. So basically you can leave it. There is no obligation that you have to stay at Etsy for a year. So exit strategy is extremely easy. And transparency. They are, you can assess their data. One of the disadvantages of being on marketplace is that you don't own your customer. And that's biggest advantage of your e-commerce shop, because when you have your e-commerce site, when customer comes to you, you have a direct relationship with the customer. So you can send them newsletters, you can send promotional codes, and pretty much talk directly to the customer, but it takes time to build the customer base. With marketplaces, you can use this data to analyze who is buying it and how often, and what the psychology of your customer is. What else do they buy and how do they buy? And it also delivers local experience, because it's one thing when you produce, let's say in Georgia, and you sell only in Georgia. So it means that your website can be in Georgian language. You can provide Georgian like payment methods, which is acceptable in Georgia. But when you sell globally, it's very, very important to adapt, have a local language website, which marketplaces translates your shop. Some of the marketplaces do better job in that, some not so well, but it's still better than having one language website. And also they make sure that the local payments experience is delivered. And this is very crucial. I'm not going to talk about payments today in details, because we're going to cover this in our next webinar. What marketplaces are and how the behaviors changed of your consumers, the way they shop. So let's go back like centuries ago. like people when they were trading, like, but the trade was exchange of goods. Later on, trade became exchange goods for money. We still, of course, have these markets, and we go to markets, but then marketplaces are markets translated into a digital space where buyers and sellers are connected. There are different types of marketplaces. Some connect buyers and sellers, some connect service suppliers. You have Airbnb, you have Uber, you have Booking.com, but then you have Etsy, eBay, Amazon, OLX. So there are multiple types of marketplaces, and we are gonna cover it later on. So what is the key question here is how global marketplace can help you scale fast and efficiently. And how different is post-pandemic consumer and their shopping behavior. As I mentioned, marketplaces can be different. They can target consumer to consumer, business to consumer, business to business. They can deliver information, goods, services, or connect investments. So which one is right for you? There is no right or wrong answer. It depends what your product is, who your customer is, and how do they like to get the product. Do they buy the product or the value experience, or you need to get together? What can be the playbook for assessing that and launching it? Let's say, I know many people here are from apparel industry and shopping. Take as an example, you are launching a fashion company from Georgia, right? Which is now actually pretty well put in a map of fashion. And this is one of the very interesting criteria. For the countries which are not that well branded, it takes extra effort to brand your product. Let's say made in France or made in Italy, any fashion item, even if you don't have a big fashion brand, it already guarantees the quality. However, if it's made in Georgia and the industry is not well known and the country is not well known, we need to educate our consumer and give them test of the quality. Therefore, product quality is always key. So before we go to marketplaces, remember when we design the product, we know the customer. We want to display it in front of the right audience. We did MVP. Why don't we use our social media, which is free, and send out some promotional materials to create expectation? Remember when I mentioned about showrooms? Not just a label, is a global portal for fashion designers, which allows you for free displaying your products and portfolio. Then what happens is many reputable buyers or scouts who are looking for an interesting idea come there, and you might get picked and be displayed in a high-end marketplace. Let's say if you want to be presented in Net-a-Porter, Farfetch, it's not that you open the shop there. They need to select you, but then they really guarantee the volume. Once we have done all the pre-marketplace launch digitally for our global consumer, then we select the right marketplace for our product. So I listed 5 biggest marketplaces, which I guess are very familiar for you guys: Amazon, Shopify, eBay, Etsy, and OLX. They are all global, and they more or less serve the same purpose. But once again, what is your objective? What is the consumer you're trying to reach? If you're creating some authentic handmade products which are not extremely high in price, Etsy is perfect for you. If you are in agriculture, Amazon, eBay is really good choice for you. If you sell more high-end products, and this doesn't exclude that other marketplaces are not good fit for you, but Shopify is good because it also allows you to scale super fast. Same goes for OLX. But besides those global marketplaces, if you want to be positioned strongly in one specific country or another, they are global classified marketplaces. And those are, in many cases, part of global marketplaces. Let's say I'm based in Amsterdam. And in Amsterdam, the most well-known, everyone knows, online marketplace is Marktplaats. And Marktplaats is only in Dutch language. But a couple of years ago, before Amazon came to the Netherlands and other marketplaces came in, I would say 90% of people would use Marktplaats. And maybe only 10% knew that it was part of eBay. But everyone knew how to navigate with Marktplaats. So those local marketplaces are very adapted into a local culture and language and the preferences consumers have. They don't necessarily have to be fancy, but they need to be simple. So if one day from global marketplace, you decide, now I want to go drill down more to UK, you might want to try Gumtree. Or if you want Netherlands, you might want to try Marktplaats or both. But there might be additional complexities setting up account there. But we'll cover that part as well later on. So once you've selected your preferred marketplace, how do you make sure that your product stands out and you are in the top of sales? Just opening up Etsy shop and leaving it there doesn't mean anything. You get 0 sales or a couple of sales maybe. It's a constant work. You need to work on it every day. You need to observe what is working and what is not. But there are some basics you need to deliver from the foundation. Any marketplace needs to have a good quality content from you in order to upload and make your shop visible. That means you need to have right images. You need to have very well detailed descriptions of your product, good title, good pricing strategy, which is competitive. Maybe from the beginning, you don't have to have huge margins, have moderate margin and competitive pricing, so you can get traction. And in the future, once you design new products or new items, you can slightly increase price if you see that's more reasonable. But staying competitive and on top of the game, pricing strategy is one of the most crucial part. One of the other ingredients which you need to have is shipping cost. Now, shipping cost for any consumer is kind of a pain, and so many research show that when you compare a couple of baskets, when they select from different shops or marketplaces, consumers decide based on shipping cost, whichever is low or free. So my suggestion would always be try to include shipping costs. So what you can do is work with your shipping providers and understand average estimated cost globally or in key countries where you expect to deliver, and try to incorporate them in the price of the product, which still doesn't exclude being competitive in the price range. But having shipping costs including, this is also one of the good advertising slogan, free shipping, which many brands are using today. So what are some of the learnings we could take from the journey of coming with the idea, designing minimum viable product, finding the right marketplace, onboarding there, and delivering to the right customers? Then we take some time, we assess it, and we learn. And we learn every day while doing it. One of the things you guys need to stop, and this is from my experience, is never base your next step on assumptions. Always listen to your customer. They always tell you what they want, how they want, and when they want. And data is the best friend of yours to do so. So obtain this data from marketplaces, from your own web shop, from your social media, from all the research you have done, or some, ask your friends, and try to live the life your customer lives daily basis, and have the purpose to sell their life, to serve a simplification of their lifestyle. And honestly, start using data in everything, especially post-COVID. And post-COVID will never be same as pre-COVID. Consumer behaviors have shifted, and it's shifting daily. And technology has accelerated and brought so many innovations that the old behavior will not come back in a way it used to be. So be ready for this exciting new way of shopping, new way of designing products and delivering products, and be ready for very sophisticated customer, because customers, current customer and future customer, is very demanding, is very conscious. They don't need you to deliver only good product, but be very transparent. They want to know that your product is created ethically, your product is sustainable and is doing good to the planet. So sustainability is one of the key decision-making factor for current consumer, and this segment is growing even more. And the best advice is keep it simple. Even one click less in a shopping behavior and user journey gives you huge competitive advantage to succeed and step up beside other brands. Some key takeaways from this session and from entrepreneurship in general. There is no right or wrong. When you do your own business, it's tough, and there is no one story you can replicate, or you read one book and, oh, I know what to do. But have passion, love what you do, and start experimenting. Experimenting, stay agile, stay adaptable, listen to your customer. And if you fail, learn. This is the only way, I think, you succeed, if you learn from your own failures. But sometimes there are some shortcuts, like having right mentors really, really help. And mentors don't always have to be like extremely successful. You can learn from your friends. You can have a mentor who is 20 years ahead of you. They went through this journey. So they can share some of the tips and tricks, which helps you to accelerate faster and less painful way. So use those resources. They are out there, and today they are so available from any part of the world equally. And as Steve Jobs says, stay hungry, stay foolish. That's my presentation, and I'm happy to receive questions.
Thank you so much, Jill. And I guess there's so many things to cover in this. The first thing I could ask is, could you actually stop sharing your screen just so we can see you more prominently? Oh, thank you. And I think, before we actually get in, there's a couple questions from the audience, and I'm also looking at the clock because I realize we're running, we're doing okay, but we're just something to think about. There are a couple things where I think we could start. And I really do appreciate that you recognize that many people in our audience tonight do specialize in either gourmet agro-food or agro-processed foods, or they're working with handicrafts or apparel. Let's say I am somebody who's just starting my cross-border sales business from one of the countries in the region. Let's take Armenia, for instance, or Moldova. Which marketplace would really be the best for me, and why? I mean, I know you addressed this a little bit, but what? Let's say I'm focusing only. I'm in my country and I'm looking to go internationally. Like, what would you say is what I should focus on?
Well, I would say, like, what is your product exactly? Like, let's make it more specific. Like, what is your product and what is your price range? Because if you are producing dresses which cost 1,000 euros, putting on market on Amazon, I don't think that's the right place. It's very different not to be available everywhere. Mm-hmm. So there is no point of hanging out everywhere, because if you want to design exclusive product, keeping this sense of exclusivity, sometimes it's hard. It's better to wait for the right place versus putting it everywhere, because then you lose branding. And when you do startup, you are not a brand, but everything you do adds on top of creating your image. So whenever I have an offer for my brand to sell on somewhere, I say, okay, would my customer like someone like to be seen on that place or not? And that's very important. So price range, segment, start, where do your customers go?
Well, that's a really good point, because you're trying to say, in the end, you need to be customer focused. We're here to grow our business, but ultimately to serve our customers. And one of the ways that you suggested that we do that is actually through data. And so let's say I'm not on a platform yet, or let's say I'm not using Amazon, or I'm not using Etsy. Is there any way that I could access that data? Or how does one learn these data, let's say these analytical trends?
Well, that's hard. Like, having data takes time, right? So you either have your social media presence, which is like free. You can, before you go to Amazon, you can already have your Instagram, you can already have your Facebook, and then Facebook gives analytics on Instagram and Facebook. You have Twitter. You can always run some questions, like run polls and see, or ask your top 10, top 100 people. We all have top 100 people. Design 3, 4, 5 questions and send questionnaires. Hey, this only takes 2 minutes. You get free of these products. Can you help me? Like, even 100 people gives you very good insight, being available in all marketplaces, which brings you no sales. Honestly, like, it's nothing but like PR of no return. It's same when people buy followers of Instagram. I always say this makes no sense because you buy followers, but you have no sales. So it's up to you. What do you want to get out of it? Do you want to look at it as a business, or you want to keep it as a hobby and tell your friends, oh, I sell on Etsy, and you have no sales?
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, of course, we have to take advantage of the platforms that we are part of and gather data that way. And then, of course, as we move into a new marketplace, then we can leverage that information, I suppose.
One thing is also you can do, I'm sorry interrupting, but
please.
collaborations are good. I mean, if you have a luxury of collaborating, because it's also hard to collaborate with already well-known brand, but if you can collaborate with someone who already has pretty extensive data or is already present there, you benefit a lot from that. Because if they are targeting same consumer type, whatever their consumer is asking them to get and the way they want to get it, like packaging, the shopping behavior, like those things you can obtain from there. And also learn, you know what, one of my friends, they suggested, you don't have to spend huge amount to know what kind of Facebook campaign works. Just go to any brand which you associate with. Like if you are producing like Max Mara or like Burberry, go to their Facebook ads manager and you can see what kind of ads they are launching. They have done this research. So there are a lot of resources you can use, like by just observing same type of brands or the brands you want to become, or simply talk to people, you know, like we all have friends who work there or friend of friends. But I mean, starting business is not always a sophisticated one, right?
Fair enough. And the last question that I have for you that I think that we haven't touched on yet is, you know, especially that you've worked in so many different international settings, you've worked across borders in many respects. How have you navigated issues related, like legal issues related to trademarks and intellectual property? How has, I mean, has any of those kinds of decisions or that kind of process, has that influenced either the marketplaces you choose or the countries that you choose to expand to or anything like that? Have you ever had to deal with intellectual property issues, you know, with your companies, your businesses?
So I'm not really expert in that, but I always say legal complexities depends on the country you are registered from, right? So my business is registered in European Union, which gives you a lot of freedom. But I always suggest that you check legal, boundaries, what you have in the countries you need to scale, or like if you want to sell within European Union, there is one, you know, like framework you need to comply. But it's always a good idea to consult with an advisor that gives you this helicopter view, or simply read this. Everything is available online. Depending which country you want to scale, what type of goods you want to sell. I know for food there is additional requirement in some countries. Also tax-wise. So these are the legal elements which you need to consider even without marketplaces, right? If you want ever to go across the board.
Of course. And just, I have one question from the audience here that I think is quite relevant for you. And this is from David Paniashvili. He's asking, what is the average marketplace platform fees? And what are the platforms that are worth my startup to be part of? So in other words, you know, is there a fee to entry when it comes to starting finding a platform or
Yeah,
a marketplace?
it depends. Usually it's not huge. Like Etsy asks you per listing. Usually the fee is calculated based on the transactions you make and also the payments. they process for you. If they are processing payments for you as well, they take percentage on the transaction value and percentage on the payment, but then they support also all payment options. And then they settle you. So they collect money in local currency and they settle in your preferred currency, what you prefer.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Jill, for being with us. And at this point, we I would like to introduce our second speaker, Levan, the co-founder of Pomona, a company that sells organic juices made in Georgia on Amazon. As I said, Levan has a fascinating story about how he managed to scale his company from being an Amazon seller to being an Amazon vendor. And Levan, the way that we're going to do this is like we did in the last webinars. We want to just have essentially just a Q&A with you. We want to learn about your story. We want to hear from your perspective how you got to how you are now. And let's start with this. I think you will agree that it's not easy to sell agro-processed foods in the region, in general, and especially online. So we are really keen to hear your story and learn how you became so successful, how you managed to get certified, how you got to Amazon, how you were able to position yourself as a Georgian produced brand on the market, and how people have responded. So can you tell us a little bit about you and about your companies and the products that you're selling, and where are you selling it, and just essentially about the business model and how you got started. Oh, you're on mute. Still on mute. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. So I see a lot of questions are coming more specific, so I'm going to try to get as specific as I can on a limited time. So we started importing organic juices that are produced in the country of Georgia. That was our first step of bringing the product in. And as Jill mentioned, at first, it was kind of tough to understand which marketplace we were going to go to and how we were going to sell that product. So we did start our own website at first. We had to Shopify at first, but slowly we realized that Amazon, at least in the United States, controls a massive market share, and consumers are just gravitating to Amazon because they trust Amazon as a marketplace. They know when they buy something from Amazon, there's a return policy. They know if something goes wrong, Amazon will stand behind it. Versus if you have your own website, it takes more time to build that trust. So by listing your products on Amazon or a known platform, there's kind of a backup on that the consumers trust. So after experimenting, getting a lot of data, we soon realized Amazon was the way to go. Of course, there are some things that need to be done when you're selling agricultural goods. So we had to get some certifications done. You have to work with FDA. And there are companies like my company that help foreign entrepreneurs or producers to understand what those requirements are to list some kind of products on Amazon. For example, if it's an electronic, or if it's consumable, or if something has a battery in it. So there's all those different guidelines of what you have to do. The great thing is most of the e-commerce websites, especially Amazon, they have very, very detailed explanations of how to do it. It takes some time to read through it, but you can read through and understand what's FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. There's a certain number you have to get, and a little bit of requirements how to list the product. So our main business, we decided we were going to switch to Amazon. So we started listing the product, which in this case was organic juices, which are produced in glasses, and we started listing them on Amazon. And over time, I'm glad to say that we became one of the top selling organic juices on Amazon, period. For example, we have a lot of different flavors we added slowly, like we have beet juice, we have pomegranate juice, we have pear juice. So slowly and slowly, consumers start getting our product, leaving us very good reviews, and we grew that marketplace rather fast. the key for us was branding, right? Because Amazon sells hundreds of millions of products. And it was key for us to own something that's ours that only we can sell. And you can do that with your product as well. Make sure you brand it. You know, you do have to work through some trademark rules in the United States. If you want to be a registered brand on Amazon or any other marketplace, you have to be a registered brand in that country. So there's a procedure that you can go through to register your brand, and that opens up other opportunities for you on e-commerce to how you can market, what kind of things you can do. So great thing that happened that we just expanding onto the brand and start adding more and more consumables within the category.
Well, so as I was going through your, marketplace on Amazon, I had a big question that was basically, how do you ensure the product's freshness, especially since you very proudly don't use preservatives?
Sure. So, I mean, I'm going to actually share my screen. Maybe it'll be useful for some people to see what I'm talking about. So this is one of our products. It's our Pomona Organic Beet Juice. It does really well on Amazon. It's a top seller in this category. Another thing what Jill was talking about, the consumers on e-commerce, it's very different because when you go to a regular retail store, if you're trying to buy something, you have no idea, is it good, is it bad, did my friend like it? But when you're Amazon, right there, you got reviews, you got ratings, you got pictures. So quality is extremely important to, because as soon as you sell, if consumer doesn't like it, the first thing they're gonna do, they're gonna give you a bad review. So that's gonna really determine how successful you are. Because any e-commerce platform, including Amazon, if you consistently getting negative feedback or negative reviews, that will bump you down. So your product is not going to be searchable. So one of the biggest things you have to think about it when you go on e-commerce, how is consumer going to find your product? So maybe they're looking for beet juice, or maybe they're looking for whatever product you make. There's thousands out there. So when you go to a grocery store, you have a middle shelf, bottom shelf, and top shelf. It usually costs money to be in that middle shelf. They used to be called, shelving fees or so forth. But on e-commerce, especially on Amazon, Amazon wants to place a product that's priced well, that has good reviews, and is sold by a credible seller top. So more good feedback you have, more good quality you provide, slowly your ranking of your product slowly moves up and kind of becomes the top shelf. So when today a consumer is searching for our beet juice, we're probably in top 3 that we come up. So that increases sales pretty quick. To answer your question, Michael, we ensure that how we package this product is very safe when it gets transported. And yes, Amazon on consumables has its rules. When product arrives at Amazon warehouse, they need to make sure that it has at least 6 months of shelf life left. So there's a lot of little details you have to work through it, but packaging, quality, make sure nothing is spoiled, and you got to be a consumer-driven seller. You got to make sure you got to keep people happy and keep learning from the feedback you get from the customers. So that's one of our products we sell, and then of course Amazon, we are able to create a storefront and feature and list a lot of our different products with it as well. So the great thing is when your brand starts getting recognized, you can keep adding and expanding out to that brand.
That's excellent. And so thank you so much, Levon. And we want to actually turn now to some of the audience Q&A as well. I'm trying to find some that really stick out. And so for instance, let me go through, because there are some quite, and I want to remind everyone too that that the chat box is great. Please do add your questions to the Q&A section. And so we have a couple of questions here, Jill, about payments, but perhaps we can come to that in the next webinar, because we're going to be focusing a little bit more on that specifically. One good question here is how does one start a company, let's say in the US, to start selling? Does one need to start a company? in the United States in order to sell on Amazon, for instance? Or is it,
I
does it allow?
think it's a very, very good question. You don't have to be based in US to sell in US, but there are logistical challenges. So one advice I'll give is you need to work with an agent or a partner or a logistics provider in US that will help you. We provide those services as well, because on Amazon specifically, there's something called Amazon Prime, and most of the people in US are members of this Prime. They have about 112 million members. What that means is consumers have certain advantages from Amazon, meaning when they buy a product from Amazon, Amazon guarantees them that it arrives there in 2 days. Obviously, if you're shipping product from Armenia or Georgia or Azerbaijan, you're not going to qualify to be there. And as a consumer, when I order something, I want it right away. Like a lot of our products, consumers get it in 1 day. So what we would recommend, you bring your inventory to US, you stage it at a warehouse, actually at Amazon warehouse, and there's a service that Amazon provides. It's called FBA, called Fulfilled by Amazon. You can Google that and find out more how that works. So we can bring your inventory. We can, you can customs clear it. You can send that inventory to Amazon. And then what happens from then on is actually magical. Amazon takes care of everything for you: shipping, labeling, returns, payments, customer phone calls. You don't really have to do much besides advertising your product. So my recommendation would be, just because of the era we are in and people want to get their products right away, nobody wants to wait a week, you would want to advance your inventory to the United States, stage it, and then when the consumer buys it, they can get it next day or day after.
Thank you, Levan. And I have a good question here as well for you. And of course, Jill, you mentioned this a bit, or whether we addressed it earlier. But Levan, I'm also curious how your perspective. What share of your sales actually goes to Amazon or goes to the marketplace, or especially because it's your only sales platform, correct?
Right. So what we decided, we were working with a lot of different platforms, but soon we realized, at least in the United States and in Europe, how strong Amazon is, especially on consumables and the other hardlines we sell. So we decided to go 100% on Amazon, and we went further ahead because we were seeing 90% of our sales were happening on Amazon. So the resources we were putting in and advertising we were putting in, we thought it was more useful to go to Amazon. So we actually, what we did, our own websites and other platforms we're on, everything drives traffic to our Amazon storefront. So it kind of becomes our main hub. Even though you can have your own website, you can do social media, we drive traffic to Amazon so that final transaction happens there.
Excellent.
So today, 100% of our products are being sold on Amazon. And we got even to a very interesting thing happen over time. Amazon, 50% of all Amazon sales are from outside sellers, people like you and me. Okay, we're called the sellers. And then Amazon monitors different brands and different products, and whatever they find interesting, they will actually send you an invite to become a vendor to Amazon, meaning like you'd be a vendor to Walmart or any kind of a Target. That basically what happens then, instead of you just selling product on Amazon, Amazon will buy that product from you and they'll do the selling. So when you're buying product, you will say, shipped by Amazon and sold by Amazon, versus shipped by Amazon and sold by Pomona Organic. So for a long time, we were fulfilled by Amazon, but we were the sellers. But when we became a vendor, then Amazon kind of took over that as well. So we have part of our portfolio that we sell, we're just sellers, and we have a part of our portfolio that Amazon is actually takes over our inventory and sells it on our behalf.
That's wonderful. And I don't know if you feel comfortable saying that, but I mean, can you share at least kind of a ballpark, figure in terms of how much of the percentage, let's say, goes to Amazon versus how much you?
Sure, it's actually a public information.
Uh-huh.
So if you're depending on the category, so let's say you're selling anything that's in agribusiness, it's a consumable, it's a juice, it's food, it's a jam. I mean, we do some Georgian products. We do tremali sauce, for example. We do spices. We do some supplements as well. So usually Amazon will charge you a 15%. They call it a referral fee. So just because you're listed on Amazon, regardless what price you sell, depending on the category, they'll charge you 10 to 20% of your sales price, right? So if your unit is selling for $100, they'll charge you $15 for the referral fee. And on top of that, only other fee you have to worry about is how you're going to deliver this product to your consumer, your shipping costs. And again, as I was recommending earlier, Amazon has a service, and so do many other marketplaces, where you ship product to them, and then Amazon will use their own logistics and their own rates to ship that product. Because if you're shipping 20 items a day, and Amazon is shipping 2 million items a day, they have better rates than you do. So you would just let Amazon do it, and they will charge you a small fee for that as well. So as an example, when I ship a juice, the product you're looking at it today, we ship it in a 12-pack, right? So Amazon will charge us, for example, a 15% fee, which is to be on Amazon, and they'll charge us another fee, which is, it can be anywhere from $4 to $20, depending how big it is. Because you could be shipping a TV, you can be shipping something small. They'll charge you that fee, and they will take care of that as well. So that's all on any kind of marketplace, especially Amazon. That's all public knowledge. Depending on category, they charge a different fee, averaging from 10 to 20%.
Thank you, Levon. And I know everyone that we are kind of pushing our time, but I think this is really good conversation. And Jill and Levon, we're also getting some really good questions. I actually want to move to one question that we've received from one of our participants, Ekaterina. I really like how her question actually blends many of the things that you just discussed, Levon, but also many of the things, Jill, that you mentioned. And I'm going to read it to you all. In the past, the easiest way to introduce a new fashion brand was to go door to door to multi-brand fashion stores and to essentially show and tell the product to the owners. I used to work in such a setting and reviewed many such presentations that approached us in person. We would then decide whether the product is something we can sell. Showrooms and physical trade show events were also a great option. However, today, this is not available. Many physical retailers have closed permanently. So for example, if I am interested in a particular Azerbaijani high-end menswear brand, and I want to help them enter the market in the US, where would I begin? And either of you could take that. I mean, Levon, it might not be related to agri-food, but it's still relevant to the business you're in. Jill, I don't know if you would like to take that first, given that it's kind of in line with some of the things you were discussing.
Go ahead, Jill.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, as I said, if you're in the luxury industry, it's a different way of positioning it. And in many cases, it's the same as you go to high-end multi-brand stores. They either accept you or not. But these kind of multi-brand stores are still available online. And one of them is Net-a-Porter, there is Farfetch, but it's not that easy to sell on them like you go on Etsy or Amazon and you open the shop. They have their buyer's team. So I would say approach those luxury brand marketplaces, but keep in mind that you either get accepted or rejected. Meanwhile, you can always position in not just a label or other luxury same segment kind of showrooms, which are digitally driven. I know also Tokyo does a lot. Asia does different kind of things. And think about it, like everyone that closed these retail stores, many of them, they closed permanently or they just kept 10% of it open. But on the background, I have friends also working with high-end fashion brands. They are all extremely busy to recreate this experience digitally. So this will come back, but meanwhile, they are super well-established, already existing luxury and brands and marketplaces. even more exclusive, which is not well known, but only works to the top 10% of society. But yeah, the options are there. It's maybe harder to get there, even to be reviewed, versus when you go in your city, you know someone. Yeah, competition is hard, but it's not impossible. And it's actually much better than just, yeah.
I'm just going to add to that really quick. Specifically, the question was how I do it. You know, the trend today after COVID is, you know, direct to the consumer, right? So this is going to stay for a while, where this middleman, a fashion store, a mall, is probably going to come back, but not as strong. So I would recommend you kind of build the model. How can I go direct to the consumer? It creates more margin for you. It creates more flexibility. I would start with a social media presence, and I would start with creating your own e-commerce store, meaning that anybody in the US should be able to buy your product. And yes, you can ship it directly from Armenia. And once you get your brand out there and slowly your sales pick up, then I would bring inventory, stage in the US so you can fulfill your demand a little bit quicker. But, you know, basics would be, you know, get your name out there, show your people what you got, you know, maybe send some samples out to some influencers or some users and get that going. You know, my biggest advice to everybody as you start, right? Sometimes we talk, we make a lot of plans, and you don't know till you do it. So start small, create a social media, start a website, and once you get traction, then you can get on Shopify, you can get on Etsy, you can get on Amazon.
Levon, I actually want to come in there to say something. And you've talked a lot about warehousing, about basically bringing the product over, keeping it so that we can then ship it out. But one person in the chat has a really good point. Their inventory is created specifically or especially for each consumer. So they don't have the ability necessarily to to store it in a warehouse. Do you?
Right. So that's actually.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So that's a unique place to be. I mean, we're talking about custom products. So
right.
Anytime you make a custom design product, the lead time is longer. So your consumer expects that it's going to take a long time. If I'm going to make a custom shoe or a custom, Italian jacket, I know it's going to take me 8 weeks to get it. So that's a small part of it, but consumer is ready for a long lead time. So you don't need, you can't move that inventory over. So I think that's okay that you can fulfill it from your own place at your origin country.
Funny enough, it makes me also think that you can potentially even use that to your advantage in the branding to almost explain it like an exclusivity element or kind of like a uniqueness to it. Like it, of course, it will take longer to get, but that's because it is coming from our individual creators, our makers. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we custom made it.
Yeah, please, Jill.
I want to add here as well, because with my brand, what we do is exactly that. So basically, we work with individual high-end customers on the psychology level. So we do their psychological assessment, and based on the personality, we design the tailored style and then make tailored product and ship entire wardrobe of tailored item. And we also give subscription items so they can order during the year. But this saves me of having no inventory at all. And then also, but gives customers this sense of exclusivity. Whatever they order, they know that it's not replicated. They know the quality. So what you need to deliver is a quality and experience and reliability. And they are willing to wait for it, and they are willing to stay loyal. As soon as you stay trusted, yeah.
No, that's wonderful, Jill, and thank you very much for that addition. I want to I think we might be getting toward the end of our time. So I want to actually get to a very important question here. Of course, I do not need to explain to anybody the incredible importance in terms of culture to it, but just the place of wine in Georgian culture, Armenian culture, and really culture across the region. And there's this really great question here saying they make about 2 to 3 tons of wine per year. Should they try the same kind of approach to an open Amazon shop? And they're asking about the budget, but that's actually a great question. Let's say anybody here is an owner of a winery and they want to export their products abroad. Does alcohol have a special kind of process that one needs to go through, because obviously it can't be sold to anybody under a certain age, especially in the United States and whatnot? Do either of you know kind of some of the processes for dealing? Oh, please, Levin.
I can answer. Yeah, I want to answer quickly on U.S. It is actually extremely complicated. There's a 3-tier law in the United States that an exporter, importer, and the distributor and the seller, they have to be all different parties. So it has to be 3 different companies: whoever imports it, whoever distributes it, and whoever sells it. And Amazon is not allowed to sell alcohol. So today you cannot buy alcohol. Most stores, like Shopify, you can have your own store to sell it, but you have to go through some very, very long process to acquire that alcohol license. So my recommendation is, I've looked into this for a long time. I've imported alcohol in the United States. You need to partner up with a current importer, distributor, or reseller and sell it through their channels, because you can't just sell alcohol. This is in the United States. I don't know about Europe.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that, Levan. And I don't know, Jill, you don't have to come in if you don't want to.
I really don't have knowledge on that.
No, it's absolutely.
But I expect that Lemon's logic applies also to you. Yeah.
Probably. And so I want to just kind of restate something that was just said in the chat, and that is that to everybody watching, we will be absolutely taking these questions, putting it into creating a guide, creating an FAQ, a frequently asked questions, and working to address these. So even if we have not answered your question now, hopefully it will be addressed later. And these are very good questions. I think just looking at the time, I think and especially, I mean, for me, it's already almost 7:30 in the evening, but I know in Georgia and in the Caucasus, it's already almost beyond 10 p.m. I think that this might be a good place for us to wrap up. Of course, we have many other, there's a poll that was just launched. So please, if you're participating, please fill out this poll. It really helps us to understand how to make these webinars more relevant for you. We used some of the information that you gave last time to help drive this forward. Like we really want to include more Q&A, for instance. So having said all of this, I would like to, I'm so sorry to close it. Levan and Jill, I could probably sit here for hours and listen to you. This is so interesting to me. But I really want to thank you both so much for being here, for taking the time out of your evening, Jill, and Levan, your afternoon, to be here with us. I would like to also, of course, thank everybody who has attended this, for taking the time out of your evenings as well to be part of here. Obviously, thank the organizers, including the E-commerce Association of Georgia, all of our partners at USAID. I would really like to thank Georgi and Miriam from the E-commerce Association of Georgia for putting this together, for being so many people behind here, behind this webinar, and of course our translator Zura from what I hear, the great work that you've been doing. Once again, just as a reminder that these webinars are brought to you by the E-commerce Association of Georgia and are supported by USAID EDGE, USAID ZIRDA, and the USAID Economic Security Program. This was the second webinar of the series of 5. The webinar was recorded and will be uploaded on YouTube and Facebook and shared on Facebook with Russian subtitles in the coming days. The next webinar will be this coming Tuesday, the 15th of December, at 2100 Georgia time, which is UTC +4. And it will be dedicated to implementing payments that many of you asked about for cross-border e-commerce. Registration is not required for those who have already been registered for this event. You will automatically receive an invitation. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please reach out to us on Facebook, or you can also, and once I can get it here, you can also email us at this email that I am about to paste into the chat. So once again, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Levan. Thank you, Jill. And I really appreciate all of your insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mikael, and thanks to all participants. Thanks, Levan.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.